Okay, yeah, there's a lot of questions that I've got about feeding. Sorry guys, for the guys that don't know me, now my name is Anton from South Africa, Randfontein. I try to answer your questions in terms of feedlotting. So any newcomers, if you're interested in learning more about feedlotting, or if you're just interested in seeing it, this is a feedlot out in Randfontein, and I try to answer the questions that a lot of the mistakes I've made in my feeding time, that I do better now. A very important thing with feeding is, a lot of people ask me about grass. I used to put my grass separate because I come out of a background of having cows on the field and they want to eat grass as much as they want. It's true. Grass is the best medicine for any cow, any bull. If there's an animal that's sick, you give him grass. If you got gastro, you give him grass. It stabilizes his stomach. Whenever in a feedlot you got an animal that his stomach is running, there's water coming out his bums, the first thing you do is put him on grass. There's nothing more quicker. You cannot give him any medicine that's quicker than grass to get that stomach to stop. The second that you feed a calf and there's a sickness in him of any kind and he doesn't want to eat, put him back on grass. You don't want to put him on an expensive feed and he cannot convert that feed into meat. But don't, in a feedlot, when they're feeding, do not put the grass separate. It's very, very important. Don't have your bale of grass on one side and you think the cows can, or the bulls can go feed grass as much as they like. Grass doesn't work like that. I'm going to tell you a good reason. Your calf creates a pH in his stomach. Every single food that he eats, every grass, every mealie, rice, every protein, every chop, got a pH level that creates in his stomach. So the second that you change food, you change the pH in his stomach. So when you start to feed and you say, okay, I'm feeding 60% chop, and I'm feeding 20% grass, and I'm feeding 10% lucerne, and I'm feeding whatever protein. You cannot change in the middle of the cycle. That's the pH. If that creates a pH of say 6.9, that pH cannot change tomorrow. So it's very important that when you put him on a feed, don't in the middle of the feed let your chommy come and tell you, listen, let's try this, we add mealies to the mix, I can get mealies cheap or whatever. Don't change your mix in the middle of the cycle. If you change your mix, your calf stands still for at least 5, 6, 7 days. There's no growth. That 6, 7 days, he must get in the background in camp. You cannot get it in feeding time. Feeding time in this kraal, nothing must change. The kraal must stay the same. The ground, I cannot come here and clean calves, kraal now. I cannot do nothing in this kraal. This cows must be nothing. There must not be stress here. There must not be worries here. It's very important. Don't change feeding. Don't change anything in the feeding cycle. And the other question many people ask me is, should they add, how much salt must they put in a feed mix? You don't add any salt to a feed mix. A feed mix is something they must eat a lot of. You put your salt separate like that. You put a salt block in every kraal. It's very important. Salt you use to slow a cattle down from eating. If I want to make a feeding block, a protein block, and you put it there in the veld for the cows, you add a lot of salt in that. And the reason why you add a lot of salt in that is to slow them down, because their mouth gets too salty and then they stop eating that block. Otherwise, one cow will eat the whole feeding block. So never add salt to your feed. That's not a clever plan. You put your salt separate, and the cow will come, or the bull will come and fetch salt, whatever they need. The salt is not a thing that you must force them to, force them to take in. They will feed salt the way they need it. Never put salt in a feed mixture. Alright guys, if there's any more questions, please ask your questions. It helped me to know what you guys battling with, and put your questions in the comments, and I'll try and answer your questions as good as possible. Thanks a lot.